Welcome back, everyone. Today we are discussing something brand new, something so unique. Wait a second, they've just been on hiatus. Campaign rares are back. These are exclusive cards in every couple of sets. Historically, they had been basically every set for a little while, and they're just unique identities, whether they're supposed to be a color cycle that works in a monocentric area, cards that identify by the character traits, right? We had the Angel, Destroyer Angel rares, we've had iconic attack rares, infinite sand rares, and feature rares, and point is, there's been a lot of them. But they're making a return after, I think, 6 sets that they've been absent since the Sun Gohan rares in set 19 Fighter's Ambition. And here we are, back to reclaim glory. I'm really excited to look at these. Let's take a peek. There's only 7 of them, so we're gonna keep it brief. We've got the only one for red, which is Son Goku Accidental Wish. It's also, I think, one of the only ones that costs 2 Z energy, which is kind of expensive, but honestly, that's a-okay, because this card is super strong. They all have the same permanent that they can't attack and gain Shenron in all areas, and then you can choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards for a +2, and it gets minus 20,000 power for the turn. This is really huge that it basically gives red an like an unison-based minus power out of the Z deck. Doesn't need to be from hand. If you're playing against a secret rare, all you have to do is find a minus 20, and then suddenly, boom, this card can come out of your Z deck and do the rest for you. Likewise, its -7 is really one of the best -7s we have. During their next turn, when your leader is attacked, the power of the attacking card becomes 1, and then it's reverted at the end of the battle, and you can't activate skills on copies of the card during the next turn. I think they basically all have that, kind of as the thematic of, you know, that the Dragon Balls fly up, turn to stone, and boom, go away. But this card, honestly, super strong. A +2 for that effect on a 20k body does mean this card is extremely sticky. We're going to have access to Yamcha basically at all times. 2 Z energy is really where this card is going to come into some turmoil. I think this card is going to be really excellent in something like Red U7 Gohan, because it does give the deck access to an always turn to awaken, assuming you can get to 2 battle phases over the course of the first 3 turns of the game, right? You, your opponent, and then back to you. So I think you're going to be in a totally fine spot to be able to get over this. This card is super solid. I don't think it's going to really change a whole ton, but it is going to be something where basically every red deck should just run this in their Z deck. Blue. I think these cards are some of the best ones, especially Goku Frieza here. Same permanent as always. Activate main +1 at the end of your turn, switch up to one of your energy to active mode. What? That's unbelievable. As a 2/1, this card is extremely easy to get online. You just produce it on turn 2, and since it's restanding in energy, you can defend it with any number of floodgates, including things like Android 17, Shu Pilaf Mai, which isn't really a floodgate, but you guess you can rip off like Double Strike or something, or most importantly, Heroic Prospects. Trunks Heroic Prospects is now online in every single blue deck for 2 total energy, which still restands 1 and 1 Z energy. Sorry, Internet. Didn't mean to do that for you. And then activate main, choose all of you and your opponent's battle cards, ignoring barrier, place them at the bottom of the deck, and then you get to add up to 1 Goku and Frieza, 7 or less mono blue from your deck to your hand. Goku's, there are some pretty good targets, right? There's things like Calamity Challenger, Another World Blitz, Dead Heat even. There's a couple different options, but Frieza is a lot worse. I'm wondering if they're going to make a blue Frieza here that's going to be a little bit better. Obviously, in the upcoming Wish deck, we might see something. But this card is certainly not that good right now in terms of the -7. It's still like a big board wipe, but a -7 on a +1 unison, I mean, no less than 5 turns later, right? But honestly, even then, just the +1 to get an energy back is probably still a better effect. I expect this card to see wide blue play and honestly bring back several different old decks. Krillin Wish After Conflict. This card is weird. It's different and good, but it's also a lot worse in some respects. So same permanent as always. And then your +2 is to bottom deck a 5 or less, which is solid. Blue doesn't have a ton of removal, so getting access to additional removal is great, especially being a +2. But it is just a 15k unison, so it's a lot more vulnerable to like hits and stuff. And since it doesn't restand energy, and you might be playing it a little bit later, it might be more vulnerable to larger types of unison removal outright. So I think this card is solid, but probably not going to see play. It might be in the Z deck just because it is a way to remove 2 costs, or 5 or lesses for just 2, but it does cost 2 Z energy, which is really costly in blue. Blue's really poor at making Z energy, and that's really what I think makes Goku and Frieza so strong, is that you just use it on your turn 1 cantrip, and immediately Heroic Prospects is online. The -7 is that you negate all of your keywords on your opponent's keyword skills for a turn cycle on their battle cards, which is actually pretty good, but again, -7 is still going to take quite a few turns, especially on a 15k that you might not even be playing until turn 3 because it doesn't have any sort of self-protection. Green, this card is super strong. Again, same permanent. It's a 2 cost 1 energy, or 1 Z energy. Activate main, your opponent discards 1 from their hand. So, there are unisons whose like entire purpose is to do that, but it has an extra cost attached to it. Green Broly makes you discard. Green Bardock makes you pop one of your 1 costs to make them discard. And this is just a non-hand area, not from hand played, -1 on your opponent's hand. This is really good. I think basically any green deck can just take huge advantage of this card. I'm really impressed by it. I think this card is going to see huge amounts of play in green decks, especially those that don't have an inherent unison. You can just pay 1 and 2 and just rip a card. The way that you could look at it, right? Let's say you were playing this and comparing this to something like Ribrianne Punishing Passion. You combo Ribrianne, which would then normally get it into the drop area, so it's going to create the Z energy for you in that sense. Then you'll pay 1, and if this card lives even a second turn, it immediately fulfills the same effect as Ribrianne, except now you've had a unison online for Dormant Potential and Frieza Charismatic Villain. In addition to that, then of course if it lives longer than 2 turns, because we have access to things like Dormant Potential and Frieza Charismatic Villain, now you can start ripping more cards? Oh, this card is crazy. I'm so impressed by it. Honestly, Activate Main for the -7 is relevant, I guess, but it's not really relevant because, again, a +1, but also, like, I'm just going to rip a card out of your hand. During your opponent's next turn, if they would draw a card by a non-leader skill, you can place up to 1 battle card from their drop area on top of their owner's deck instead, basically preventing any additional draws off of their effects. You're going to go ahead and stack their drop area on top. Right, so this can maybe put back a bunch of like useless cantrips to the top of their deck. Something that, hey, you know, if you're getting to the end of the game, you need to start seeing boss monsters. You have to see negates. You have to see overwhelms. But if you're just like, okay, so you have 3 cantrips in your drop area, I'm gonna put those back on top. Could be relevant, but honestly, again, just make them discard. Just make them discard. So crazy. Yellow, these are definitely the weakest ones of the bunch in my opinion. I think these cards are really not very good. Android 17 is a 15k. He's I think the only one that costs 2 Z energy as a 15k. Same permanent as always. Activate main +2. Tap 2 of your opponent's battle cards or unisons. Okay. Cool. And then activate main -7, choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards, switch to rest mode, and then play a battle card from your drop with its skills negated for the game, and you can't play battle cards until the end of your opponent's turn. I don't understand why that -7 is so weak. Obviously, it's a +2, so it can happen, you know, turn 4 or 5 or whatever, if completely uninterrupted, but I just don't see a world where this is actually the way to go. So, you play the card with its skills negated, but then you can't play new cards, so you can't evolve, you can't Patara, you can't, you know, do any number of other, like, gimmicky things, and then its skills are negated for the game, so you can't even, like, get a Sin Cold-Hearted or something to try to pressure your opponent in that sense. And then you can't play battle cards until the end of your opponent's turn, so no Floodgate effects. I don't understand why this card is so weak. Tapping 2 cards is not something Yellow has ever really struggled with, and certainly now it's really, really, really bad. I think this is probably the worst card of the bunch, next to... They just won't let him be good. This is the best looking one. Look at this card. Look how pretty it is. And yet it's so unequivocally terrible. Same permanent as always. It's a 2 cost 1 Z energy. Activate main, choose 1 of your cards and energy costs 3 or less, negated skills for the game, and your opponent gains control of it for the game. Then you choose 1 of their cards and gain control of it. So this, in theory, seems like it could be okay, because, oh, I'll give you this cantrip, I'll take your boss monster, go, go, go. Except that if it's a boss monster, it probably already attacked. And that means that it's in rest mode, so you don't get to attack with it. It doesn't ignore barrier for that. You negate the card skills on your end, so it's not like you could give them something that has some sort of weak effect, or like negative type effect. It's a +1, so it's not like you're gaining markers to get the -7 very quickly. It's a 15k, so it's extremely vulnerable. The only use case that I can see for this card is two things. Super 17 awakens when you have a unison with a specified cost of 2. So cool, I guess that would allow you to do it. And then if you're playing like U7, you could maybe swing with like a 4k Gohan or Piccolo and then give it to your opponents. That way they have a little card for you to attack with your 6 cost. But that's not good enough. Also note that the cost of the thing is to choose one of your battle cards. You have to give your opponent to even get the +1. You have to give them a card to get a +1. So this card isn't going to like gain markers every single turn. It's only going to gain markers when you switch control of cards. So as thematic as this card is, it's terrible. And I don't know if I can forgive Bandai for their transgressions here. Just make a good Zamasu card. It won't kill you. Activate main -7. Choose one of your opponent or one of your battle cards, and it gains indestructible until the end of your opponent's turn. And then you can't activate copies on it during your next turn. So again, Stone Dragon Balls gotta wait a turn. Yada yada. Gaining indestructible just until the end of your opponent's next turn basically means that this is a -7 to protect one card sometimes. Because against red, they'll just remove it. Against yellow, they'll just remove it. Against blue and green, sure, that might be a little harder, but not impossible, because they also do side and main cards like the future Trunkses that remove indestructible, because indestructible is a really problematic keyword if it sticks. This card is atrocious. I really can't understand how they compared this to like Goku Frieza or the red Goku and went, yeah, these are all at the same power level. It boggles my mind. But I gotta stop looking at this, otherwise I'm gonna burst the vein. And last, we have Black Chilai Wish for the Fighting to End. I think this card is super slept on. I saw a lot of people hating on it in the comments and in early impression videos, but really, I think this card is super strong. It's a 1/1 20k, so it's immediately going to have online any sort of unison-based support, as well as give you access to Spirit Boost from nowhere. And then it's just, you know, same permanent as always. Activate main, +1. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck. Place up to 1 battle card from your in the dropper warp, and place the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. If you compare this and put this into things like Vegex and Trunks Xeno, you can set up your warp to have X amount of cards, or your drop to have X amount of cards, not to mention putting cards there. So if you're playing like Trunks, you can immediately put like a Trunks 5 cost over there, the new promo that we're going to get, the 6 cost, or you can put the 8, or you can put Gohans or Gotens, or Cumber Secret Rare. You can put anything just straight up into your warp for +1 on a unison that your opponent's gonna ignore because it doesn't do anything like advantage wise, so it's just a consistency piece. And then if you're playing something like Vegex, you get to look at the top 3 and then mill one of those cards to your drop area. And if it's a Supreme Kai, if it's a Vegeta or a Trunks or a Vegex while your board is empty, that's a free play. Why do people think this card is bad? It's a 1/1 20k. Like, yeah, it can't attack, but you're just increasing the insane amount of consistency for your deck for 1 card in hand. Vegito is obviously an extremely impressive unison, and to give that up to play this is crazy, except that Vegito costs 2 Z energy, and if you're playing in certain situations, it's not going to land. If you're playing against like blue or something, they probably won't even spend the energy to remove this card, but they absolutely would remove and target Vegito. So it's not really something that like this replaces Vegito, it's a supplementary card that increases the consistency of your deck. The -7 is honestly really strong as well. Again, it's not super likely because you're a +1 unison, but you just choose one of your battle cards, send it to the warp, and then you get to add 3 battle cards from between 3 and 7 from your warp to your hand. So it draws 3 at the cost of 1 card on your board. But considering that the card that you'll send is probably something that you overwhelm, you're going to put yourself in a position to just go straight up +3. I don't see how people think this card is bad. It's not the strongest card in the entire world, but it's an extremely large consistency booster for lots of different decks that can really use these boosts. So that's the Unison package out of this set. I really am impressed with these campaign rares. I'm so glad they're back. I love them. The art is incredible. But why'd you have to do Zamasu so dirty?